Hello?
Talk's friendly little proletariat uprising. America's first competition talk show. You're in the hub.
I believe the world is burning to the ground. Oh well, I guess we're gonna find out. Let's see how far.
Good day and welcome to The Hub. I'm your host, Joel Aaron. We have Joe and Greg on the panel all week long, and you can vote for which one of them won the face-off debate yesterday on the program. We'll tell you who the winner is next Wednesday on the show. You know, I have been walking around and visiting my favorite home away from home, Star Schmucks Coffee, a lot lately, and more I am seeing these duffel bags people are carrying in with the U.S. Census Bureau logo on the side of it, because they have gone out now and hired literally hundreds of thousands of census private citizens for census taking jobs around the country right now through the U.S. Census. And one of the things, they are now getting responses back from some of the more honest census takers out there, is that Labor Department statistics, they have to report, the Census Bureau has to report to the Labor Department on a weekly basis. They are now realizing that there is a chronic fire and hire phenomenon going on in the U.S. Census Bureau, where, for example, one woman by the name of Naomi Cohn recently said that she has been fired on 4 separate occasions by the U.S. Census Bureau and then rehired again, so that she counts for 1 in the unemployment category and for 4 in the employment category. So they're actually lowering they're lowering unemployment statistics by doing this, and I guess that's great, because the more I am fired, the lower unemployment goes. And so the more so you have a responsibility, I think, to save the country, to protect Uncle Sam by firing me as much as possible, because it helps in the long run. Joe, you can't disagree with this, right?
I guess I can. Look, the thing about this is it doesn't inspire confidence in the accuracy of what's going to be taken and reported. And that's, I think, the underlying concern for me is if the census management is being it's churning so heavily that they can barely keep up with their own employees, how in the devil are they going to count the rest of us? My brother was a supervisor on the 1990 census, and it's come a long way down.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, how much can you trust the process when those who are administering the process are untrustworthy, Greg?
Well, with the census, my whole thing was everybody should have decided, hey, the census is not where you take a stand against the federal government. Most of the questions on there were not that intrusive. Everybody posts their daily lives on Facebook, and so answering the census in the first place would have avoided some of these problems. Now, granted, some people don't speak English and don't like to fill out forms, but when you're firing somebody just to pad the unemployment figures, it also shows that every month when the non-farms payroll comes out the first Friday of every month and the unemployment rate goes up, and wow, Obama's stimulus package really helped that. There's no credibility in any of these numbers. And then the census added 70,000 jobs in the month of April. But really, was that only 18,000 people that got rehired 4 times? That, to me, that's the real problem.
Well, and that's the thing. And what we're finding out now is that it may not be the place where you take a stab against the government, but the Census Bureau apparently is the place where the government takes a stab against statisticians.
That's it.
That's where we're headed now. But speaking of a credibility gap right now, we're basically waiting on hold over the Senator Joe Sestak issue going on right now. Sestak, Pennsylvania number 7. Apparently earlier last week, former President Bill Clinton, the backstory on this is that he was offered a job in a private department, basically on a commission board, if he were to resign his seat and not run for re-election against who he was running against
not to run for Senate against Specter.
Yeah, running for Senate against Specter. And here's the thing that's kind of interesting about this is that I have to ask this question: did they jump the gun? Because last week, he beat Specter in an upset in the primary victory last week. And quite frankly, given Specter's record and the fact that neither Democrats nor Republicans, even in Pennsylvania, really like him that much right now, did they bet on the wrong horse by even chancing this? Joe?
Okay, there's so much to this story to go into. There's credibility issues, there's honesty issues, there's legal issues. Let's start with the judgment issue. What idiot says, man, we really need to keep Specter? that you've got a judgment issue with whatever political leader is leading a party and says we're gonna keep Arlen Specter as our guy. Makes me question anything else that you say from that point on.
It's not just a credibility episode; it's a tone deafness.
Completely out of touch. Second of all, this is illegal. This whole action is illegal. The top will come off of this. I don't know if they've had enough time to get their story straight. But besides the big law that everybody's saying about offering these the job, there's another act that Rich Lowry had a column on this weekend, the Hatch Act from the early 20th century. Just the fact that they're announcing this happened is already put them in conflict with the law. You can't send an emissary, you can't send Clinton in to dodge responsibility for this. Rahm is going to take some heat.
Well, and fortunately for Rahm, he was out of the country at the time, but before he made the request of the former president. But here's the thing. I mean, you've got guys like Robert Gibbs, press secretary, saying nothing happened, which is why we won't tell you what happened. And you have to wonder at that point, what are you covering up? But the thing is here, I do have to say, is this really, at this point in the process, illegal, or is this more Republican grandstanding too early on this? Because, I have to ask the question, it would be illegal if he had taken the position, having not resigned his position or having run for a re-election. But he was not. The request was made. Certainly, it was inappropriate, somewhat, unethical, or outside the scope of what he should have done. But quite frankly, he did not say yes. At least to our knowledge, and he may have just looked at him funny, kind of cross-eyed, and said, "You know what you're asking," or whatnot. I'm just being theoretical here, but he did not take the job. Is the point, Joe?
Well, according to the Hatch Act, it's the offer, not the acceptance. You cannot interfere with the election process, and by making even an offer of an unpaid position through an emissary, that's in violation of the Hatch Act.
Okay. So.
Well, the GOP position right now, they are just asking for an investigation. And I got to say that the Democrats and the Obama administration, they're just digging their own grave. Why would you, the Clinton story that came out on Thursday, that's hilarious because you're bringing in somebody that's no stranger to investigations and who the American media, they were infatuated with Obama. Now Obama and Clinton is his emissary to kind of thin the herd for Arlen Specter to get elected. This story has legs. It's not going to go away anytime soon.
Well, you've got Pennsylvania Governor Ed Rendell said that Obama has that this is not really a big deal. You can't miss the forest for the trees. Overall, Obama promised that he was going to clean up Washington, and he has cleaned up so much of Washington. Now, he never promised that he was going to clean every single smidge of Washington, D.C., because it's a dirty little town. You have to admit, it's the city of secrets here. But, so when you're starting that far in the hole, Joe, you've got to give somebody a little bit of time to sweep things under the rug.
Well, transparency, a new era of high ethics and transparency in government. Hasn't shown it a single time. We're a year and a half into the term. Prove it, buddy.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. You've got to look at this. You've got to look at, we said we're going to follow the stimulus money expenses. We're going to give you recovery.gov and the most reliable man in Washington, Joe Biden, to follow it and track it. And before long, we're sending money to districts that don't exist. You've got town hall meetings that the president says are basically a stamp of his commitment to openness and transparency. And the media is pointing out, even Helen Thomas is pointing out. She came out from her coffin and said, I can't believe that you're doing this because you screened all the questions ahead of time. This is obviously a propped up thing. You've got things like the TARP misappropriation of funds. Even though we disagree with George W. Bush for opening the Pandora's box with TARP 1, originally the funds were allocated to buy toxic assets. By the time Paulson got out, and the new regime took place, it was all about sending money to those organizations, just carte blanche to try and fix it. So they changed the entire terms of what TARP was supposed to do. So to your point exactly, Joe, if we're talking about openness and transparency, we are not seeing any of that just yet. It's very disingenuous to expect us to just trust him on this issue. We'll see you tomorrow on The Hub.
Told me you had a boyfriend who looked like a girlfriend that I had in February.